Hello guys, and welcome to another video by me, Nikki Jackson. This is a special painting process video of a commission that I have been working on all summer. It's been a pretty big project and a very emotional one because it's a very special piece. It's a spiritual painting for a lovely client, and it's going to be a gift for someone very special to them. And yeah, so I just wanted to take you through the whole process. As you can see, I have sketched it out and I'm blocking in some light layers of colour. I chose an A3 deep edge canvas for this painting. And yeah, so we started off with blocking in the main colours. I just wanted to get a feel for how this piece was going to look. The client gave me some details that they wanted included, and we kind of worked together to make it come to life really. There had to be some tweaks along the way in order to make it work, and yeah, it's come out really good. So I initially sketched out the idea in my sketchbook, and yeah, and then I transferred it onto the canvas. So now I'm starting to darken some of the colours, block in some sort of deeper layers, and just really build it up. Now we're skipping ahead a bit and I am adding in more layers. The first few are quite watered down, and then we start sort of thickening up the paint and adding in the texture and details. So I kind of just took each section at a time and yeah, blocked in the colours really before adding all the detail later on. So as you can see, it's quite an unusual painting. It's based on a journey of the two people, and on the right hand side is a very stormy sky and sort of like desert wasteland, and then over to the left you've got the mountains and the sky brightening up and all the beautiful colours that the sun creates in a sunset or sunrise. It could be either. So then we have the bright electric blue of the lake around the mountains, and twisting around that we have the long winding road, which represents the spiritual journey. And then we of course have all the foliage as well. I did need to include a scripture within the piece, and we went back and forth about where that was going to be located on the painting, and it wasn't really till towards the end that I kind of knew where to put it and how I was going to integrate it. So you will see me starting to add texture now. We're adding texture with a palette knife on the mountains, and we've added some splatters in the sky. I like to give that as a sort of abstract kind of feel to it as well, and I'm using a small palette knife to give the desert area a bit of texture as well. So these are quite messy initial layers, and it all helps to add lots of texture and interest to the painting. I'm using my palette knife here for the road as well. I wanted to give kind of like a gritty, stony texture to it, and the palette knife is a really good tool to use for this. So I'm just going in with some sort of browns and whites and just adding it here and there. You can see I've added in quite a bit of white for highlights, and just building up the layers to give that depth. I've also tried to add in perspective here with the road starting wider and winding round and getting narrower and narrower as it gets towards the distance of the mountains. So now I'm trying to add in a bit of grounding for the mountains using the palette knife and Payne's Grey. This is a really lovely colour. Instead of using black, it's sort of like a very dark navy blue, even though it's called Payne's Grey. And that's helping me add some more depth and grounding to the different areas of the painting. So again, we skip ahead. I found myself really needing to really concentrate and figure out how I was going to make these areas work, and so I didn't film some of the process and just carried on. And yeah, I've added a lot of foliage, a lot of trees, and some sort of like wildflower kind of grasses, and just things to really give some depth and interest into the different areas of the painting. I'm using a mix of greens, browns and whites to create different depths of sort of the shadows and the highlights. And you will see I play around with a lot of different greens as well, just to give it a bit more interest. And yeah, I'm adding in a darker one here because these trees are closer to us, so they would be darker, and the trees that are further away would be lighter. So again, trying to work with more perspective to yeah, really create a sense of a journey in this piece. So here I am toning down some of the area at the front. I felt like it looked a little bit too sort of too linear really, so I was trying to soften that down a little bit. And you can see I've added in more texture onto the road with sort of some darks, mainly Payne's grey again, and grounding in those foliages as well. So I'm just adding in some more depth into the trees. This is a beautiful green, really vibrant and very natural looking, mixing that in with the more pastel-y greens that I've used before. I'm just trying to get the shape of the bottom of the trees right, and sort of just doing touch-ups really now, putting in some more lovely blues into the lake, and just looking at areas that need touching up, adding some highlights into the back of the lake as well with the palette knife, and get some nice lines going with that. And I'm doing the same again with the grasses at the front, just adding in a little bit more texture. So here I am adding some highlights to these trees with some white, and I'm constantly changing brushes as well, different size brushes to give different looks and textures. And now I'm adding in some Liquitex matte medium gel. Now this is going to act as a glue, because after much deliberation I decided to collage the scripture onto the painting and use that big green area to really show it off, and it's worked really well. I printed it off and tore around the edges, and then I glued the back of the paper and on the canvas, and then positioned it where I wanted it and made sure it was really smooth. And yeah, it's worked really well. So I've covered it over with another layer of the matte medium just to really seal it in and make sure it doesn't lift at all. And after I've done this, I literally left it to dry overnight to make sure it was fully set before I added in any more paint or water. So now it's time to try to integrate this scripture into the painting more. I felt like it stood out so much with the white of the paper. So we're going in with washes of different greens and being careful not to cover up all the words, but to try to do like a light layer of green to integrate it and make sure it doesn't stand out in the wrong kinds of ways. So I'm just using a very watery mix of paint. Now this wouldn't have worked if I hadn't have let this thoroughly dry. This was perfectly set before I did this, so there was no bubbling or lifting. Now I'm adding in a bit of that green in other places, just to make it really pop, because I felt like it had got a little dull in areas, so I was just adding in some extra greens to kind of break it up and really lift it where it needed it. So after letting that layer dry, I went in with some darker greens and started adding in some grasses around. I've been really careful not to cover the whole scripture up. And now we move on to the lake. I am using some gold foiling medium, and again using the matte medium to glow it down. These are like, I think they're called gilding flakes. So they're flakes of gold, like foil, that you can put on, and I use the matte medium to glue it down, and then again leave it overnight to dry. So while that is drying, I decided to do little touch-ups on other areas of the painting, little highlights here and there, little touch-ups in the mountains, and then the next day you can see me scraping off the excess of the gold with a tough brush and just giving it a good scrub, and all that loose excess comes off. I did tone this down a bit because I felt like it was a bit chunky, so I used a bit of fine sandpaper to just take it back a little bit, and then added some more whites and things, and then added some other little details, and that was it. So I hope you enjoy this process video, you enjoyed seeing how it came out. This was a very detailed piece and it took me a long time to complete, but I'm really pleased with how it's come out, and I hope you've enjoyed having an insight into how I've completed this commission. Thanks so much for watching, guys, and I will see you again soon.